The San Jose Sharks have made the decision to move on from head coach David Quinn.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at San Jose Hockey Now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And of course, we have breaking news today that the Sharks, Mike Grier, firing head coach David Quinn after 2 seasons. And to be honest, I was surprised. So we're going to talk about kind of what happened with Quinn. We'll talk about Mike Grier's availability. And then I'm going to give a list of some guys to potentially keep an eye on as the Sharks go through their kind of coaching carousel. This is the second coach I've had to coaching job search I've had to cover now on the podcast. So before we get into all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or on Google Play. So the Sharks, of course, let go David Quinn after 2 seasons in San Jose. During that time, he accumulated a record of 41 wins, 98 losses, and 25 overtime losses, which, is not the greatest record. But again, I was surprised. We'll talk about with Mike Grier's availability, but this team was we all knew what this team was going to be going into this season, right? This team was structured or built to be a bad roster to allow young players chances to develop. Combine that with losing Logan Couture for all but 5 or 6 games this year. Trading Erik Karlsson before the season starts, trading Tomas Hertl during the trade deadline. This team was set up to fail, right? And that's okay, right? This was the demolition year of the rebuild. This is supposed to be the low point, and the Sharks have been potentially rewarded with that, as they have the best odds to get the number 1 draft pick in the 2024 NHL draft. But the reason I was surprised is because I thought Mike Grier, who's been, we know how much him and David Quinn, they go back. He even mentioned his press availability, how Quinn's such a great guy, great hockey, it was a, sad, devastating, kind of disappointing day. I thought Grier would give David Quinn a season, right? Of, hey, we know this year was bad. This year was meant to be bad. What happens if we put some more NHL caliber pieces? What happens next year? And then we can kind of go from there, right? And most likely the Sharks would be bad again next year. And then you can maybe move on from Quinn when you're continuing to kind of work through your building phase, right? But Mike Grier, who has been very, in his 2-year tenure with the Sharks, has been very, at times, cold and calculating, and he felt that it was time to move on from David Quinn. And we'll get to the availability here, but the thing, I think, it wasn't the losses, right? I think it might have been the voice. And for a team that was as bad as it was this team, right? Minus 150 goal differential, easily the worst team in the NHL. Basically, if it wasn't for Connor Bedard missing a few weeks, this team would have basically gone, wire to wire as the worst team in the NHL. Like, I'm curious, so if it was the voice maybe kind of falling on deaf ears, if maybe the team, again, kind of not being prepared on some nights. Like how many nights did this team just kind of in the first period, 5 shots on goal, like just not look like it was ready. Maybe it was the blowouts, the constant, maybe every 2 weeks getting blown out like 7-2 type of scenarios, whatever it was. Mike Grier felt like it was a time for a change. And I think for Quinn, unfortunately, it's just how it is with coaching, right? In the past year, we've had 16 head coach. I believe that's what the stat is, right? Is 16 head coaches, basically within the past year or 2 years that have been, new. Like it's just absolutely wild, just how often just how often coaches get swapped out. So, it's you feel bad for David Quinn. I like David Quinn was, every interaction I had with Quinn, very respectful for me, especially, doesn't know me from anybody, was, answered my questions. I thought, that part of it is going to be, I feel bad for him, not getting to do what he wants to do. But again, like I think Quinn has built up enough cachet where he'll be able to, get another job if he wants to do it, maybe assistant coach, head coach, whatever. And again, coaches get turned over so often where I'm sure he will land on his feet here at some point. But I think though for the Sharks, like this next hire, and we're going to talk about some potential candidates. This is a very important hire. You could argue one of the most important hires that the Sharks have had in their franchise, right? I think, Todd McClellan, who when the Sharks kind of started to enter into that, Stanley Cup window was one of the biggest hires as he kind of brought the Sharks to that next level. But I think for now, finding the right coach that fits with a new progressive scheme, right? Younger player who could connect to younger players, continue to grow and develop these younger players and get this organization on the right track is huge, right? Because again, like if you want to you want to avoid being the Buffalo Sabres, the Ottawa Senators, these teams that are in this like perpetual rebuild. A lot of it has to do with coaching, right? Having the right coach in the right place at the right time to help these young guys as they continue to learn how to become NHL players, giving them opportunities to succeed and kind of coaching them so that way they continue to get better. This is a very important hire for Mike Grier. Again, it's easy to burn things down and tear things down, right? But building things up, this is the hard part. And this is where you separate yourself from being one of those teams, or you become, maybe the next Colorado Avalanche who have, right? They found the right coach with the right pieces. And they went on and won 2 Stanley Cups, and they're, potentially could win another one here now this year and the next. Like they're going to be Stanley Cup contenders for a while, right? This is this important. Even, Tampa Bay, right? Finding the right coach right now that fits with what you want to build this is a huge hire for Mike Grier, especially with all the potential very highly quality talent that's going to be entering into the system here soon, whether it's William Eklund is already here, potentially Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, who we still don't know, if he's not here this year, he's going to be here the next year. Quentin Musty, like Shakira Mukumojon, finding the right coach for these guys. Very important hire. So we're going to be talking about kind of Mike Grier's availability, what we kind of learned from that. And then again, discussing guys who I would keep an eye on, who I like. Anyway, guys who I'd keep an eye on here as Mike Grier looks for the next head coach of the San Jose Sharks. We'll get to that here in just 1 minute. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard ain't looking too good. You're feeling low. Not sure if you or your team can pull out a win? That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most richest and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare with your progress with your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge others players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in-game tournaments to earn extra rewards and climb the little leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, Mike Grier's availability. So pretty short. He's very, very kind of close to the vest with stuff, and that's Mike Grier, right? You know, he's been very particular with what he says and how he says it, his wording, and you know, it's kind of one of the things I've learned listening to Mike Grier is he's not going to let out more than he really wants to let out, and I think you look at his brother Chris Greer, kind of GM of the Miami Dolphins, very much in the same vein, right? Both those guys, you know, they're gonna give you some stuff, but he's going to kind of give out, you know, little bits of when he can here and there. So, you know, he talked about, I think that the big thing was, you know, how much this, you know, he's been thinking about this and how much it hurts, right? Because that is one of his friends, and somebody he's known for a while, and he called it a difficult day. But when asked about if the record went into it, he mentioned it wasn't really the record. You know what? Like, yes, they were a terrible team this year, but I think the thing that kind of stuck out to me was finding the right voice for the kind of the people in the locker room, especially expecting it to be a very young locker room again, right? We know, you know, Mike Grier's kind of let it be known they don't expect to be super crazy in free agency this year, right? Where they want to slowly build this thing up, use the draft as your main purpose. And then I think once they start to be a little bit more competitive, then you go out in free agency and try to find those kind of ancillary pieces that fit with what you're trying to do. But I think though that finding the right voice, and that's what makes me think that maybe Quinn, I don't want to say he lost the locker room, but maybe he just wasn't the right coach for the Sharks right now. And again, when you lose this much, I'm sure it's hard. It's only human nature to kind of be like, you know what, let's just get to the end. Let's just kind of grind, like, let's just get to the end of the season and, you know, kind of go through the motions here at the end. And, you know, there was plenty of faults with Quinn's system. And, you know, there's, I like Micah, Blake McCurdy on Twitter is kind of talking about kind of, you know, Quinn wasn't maybe kind of getting the most out of what he had to work with. And again, Greer said it right. This roster it's not meant to compete this year, right? They were not a playoff caliber. That was kind of his words, right? Not a playoff caliber roster. You know, a ton of injuries this year. And he, you know, said Quinn did a good job of kind of keeping the morale up, trying to get the most out of, you know, kind of fighting to the end, trying to get the most out of he can. But again, you know, he after talking, you know, kind of doing the exit interviews, talking to the team, felt that it just wasn't the right voice right now, which I find really interesting. And it makes me almost think that I wonder if Quinn, again, don't know, just me, just kind of thinking out loud. I wonder if Quinn was just kind of like, maybe I'm not the right person. Maybe this isn't the right thing for me. Maybe I, you know, and just kind of wanted to get, you know, kind of get out of this situation, which I can, again, his record, you know, 41, 98 and 25 or whatever it was. That's exactly what it was, but 41, 98 and 25 in 2 seasons. Like that's a tough, that's a tough kind of ask for any coach to kind of go through that. And then as you continue to go through new cycling hires and they look at, you know, how many games did you win? Not a lot. So, But again, it makes me think, especially with the Sharks being such a young roster, right? You have so many players under the age of 25. You have Zetterlund, you got Eklund, you're going to have, Bordalo, Gushin, like what potentially two guys under the age of 20 and Will Smith and, hopefully Macklin Celebrini. Like this is a very, very young roster. And I know David Quinn is a, former college coach, but you look at kind of as he left New York, right? The way kind of the thing that followed him leaving New York was how he treated younger guys. And I thought he learned a lot from that. And, again, maybe didn't have the best player, like you couldn't not play William Eklund in the top 6 because this team just didn't have enough young guys or enough players to kind of replace him. But, it's that development of the young players, I think, is so important and so key. And maybe right now, just Quinn getting Greer's kind of what what Greer kind of said, trying to read between the lines. Maybe Quinn's just not that guy right now. And I wonder if Quinn had a more veteran roster, if he'd be more, I think just some coaches, right, better with veteran rosters, some coaches better with younger players, and that's what kind of makes me think about maybe just that right fit at the right time. And I maybe just Quinn just is not that guy right now. So another kind of couple interesting things. John McCarthy is expected to be back with the San Jose Barracuda. We'll see about the assistants. Both those guys their contracts were expiring this year. Again, Greer's still kind of going through the process of year-end interviews and trying to kind of figure everything out. But I thought it was interesting, especially with kind of the very disappointing season the Barracuda had, that they're going to let John McCarthy kind of continue to try to figure this thing out for the Barracuda. So just kind of something to keep in mind there. The Sharks assistants are all going to stay on. But if they want to they're going to stay on right now. But if they want to check out other options, they're more than free to do that. And then whoever they hire as the head coach is also probably going to go through an interview process with them and see, so there might still be some changes there. So just kind of keep in mind. But, and then he also mentioned Will Smith, no updates on Will Smith. And he says basically, as soon as he knows something about Will Smith, we will probably know something about Will Smith, because I'm sure the Sharks will be very excited to announce when and if Will Smith finally signs his ELC. So some other kind of important things from the availability is he's not going to rule out anyone regardless of the NHL experience. If they have a lot of NHL experience, if they don't have NHL experience, they want to find the right person right now. And I think that's a key thing, right? And you've seen Greer be very thorough with these kind of, even going back to when Greer was hired, right? This is a long, thorough process. I expect the coaching to be kind of a long, thorough process, to be honest. Hired David Quinn. It was pretty quick after he got there. And I expect with this one, he wants to try to make sure he finds a coach that's going to be the right fit for this team. So yeah, I've come up with some guys, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. But I wouldn't be surprised if they lean younger, to try to maybe find a coach who maybe does have the most NHL experience, but maybe go for an upside swing where they think he can kind of grow as this team grows, maybe connect with the younger players a little bit more. So we'll get to some of the 5 guys who I just have kind of circled right now to keep an eye on. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. And if you hate waiting, because who likes waiting, Indeed's US data shows up over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. So join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you need to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. I think begs the question, who should the Sharks try to hire, right? So I have, again, 5 guys. There's a whole slew of guys out there. 5 guys, though, who I think make a lot of sense. And 3 of them, kind of not as much as in the NHL experience. 2 of them would be rehires, but let's start in the Sharks' own backyard. And that's Ryan Warsofsky. So Sharks assistant coach right now. And when the Sharks hired him, with David Quinn, a lot of people kind of pointed to him as being the next San Jose Sharks head coach after David Quinn. Former head coach in the AHL with the Chicago Wolves, won a Calder Cup in 2022. Also AHL coach with the Charlotte Checkers and AHL, was also with the ECHL South Carolina Stingrays, where was a head coach there. Made it to the Kelly Cup finals, but did not win it, unfortunately. But Warsofsky, who I realized I just spelled his name wrong, I think is a potential, like, I would say is, I just spelled right. I would say he's kind of the guy I would look at first. I think, right, you hired him, hoping get some assistant coach. We know he's a good head coach, right? He's won wherever he's gone. We know, working the AHL, especially where you're having to kind of deal with veterans, you're dealing with young developmental guys. You've still been able to win there. It's that nice blend there of being able to do that. Again, he's been playing, kind of working on the defense here. I know the defense hasn't been the best for the San Jose Sharks, but I think Ryan Warsofsky is the guy I would kind of put in the pole position right now to be the next Sharks head coach. Just because, again, I think you hired him as the assistant head coach who he interviewed for the job last time. Now that he has, some NHL experience as well, I think combined with his AHL head coaching experience, he's 36, 37, or, he's young enough where I think he can connect with young players and grow with them. So that's the guy I think is right now, if I had to put odds on it, I think he is would be the top guy. So another guy, David Carle, the University of Denver head coach. He's also previously the assistant coach for Denver, and then assistant coach for the Green Bay Gamblers, but in the USHL. 2-time, including this last season, NCAA champion head coach. He also, his brother, Matt Carle, former Shark. Not that matters, but Carle, though, is young guy, kind of up and comer. He is going to be an NHL coach at some point. It's basically whenever he wants to be an NHL coach, he's going to be an NHL coach. Has done an excellent job with the University of Denver. And you can see the way he can game plan, right? Go look at that Boston College game where they beat Boston College, right? Boston College with this prolific offense. And yes, the goalie played out of his mind. But the way they were able to kind of shut down that that team and kind of keep them frustrated until they basically had to kind of go all out to try to score in the third period. I think the tactician in him, his ability to get guys to kind of continue to play kind of above their weight. The recruiter, we'll see, again, recruiting kind of how that works out in the NHL. But I think David Carle, if you want to swing for the fences, I'm 100% all in on trying to hire David Carle because I think he's going to be an excellent NHL head coach. So another guy without coaching experience, Joe Ward, currently the Vegas Golden Knights assistant coach, also was assistant coach for Henderson in the AHL. He's going to be an up and comer, well respected. I think leader of men type of guy, kind of, cutting his teeth right now as a coaching. Maybe a little bit early to look at him as a potential NHL head coach, but I think for him is just, again, going to be a matter of time before he is a coach. And it kind of, when you're looking at former players as coaches, especially guys who Joel, I tend to kind of go for those, like, kind of not the superstars, but like, I don't want to call them grinders, but guys who kind of maybe had to work for a little bit more because I think they kind of know what is required. And I've already seen a bunch of like, we'll just hire Joe Thornton to be a coach. Like, what makes you think Joe Thornton? Like, Joe Thornton's a great player, and who knows, maybe he could be an excellent head coach, but what coaching has he done, right? And he's played with like some of these guys who he'd be coaching. I don't know. Those, like, that just worries me, the legacy hire. But I think Joe Ward is going to be an NHL coach at some point. Maybe it might be a little bit too early, but just someone to kind of keep in mind. So the next two guys are former coaches. One, Jay Woodcroft. He was the Oilers head coach. We kind of know his story. Oilers, of course, this year started terribly, thanks to poor goaltending. He got fired in November. Former head coach in the AHL with the Bakersfield Condors, also was assistant coach for Edmonton, the NHL, assistant coach in San Jose in the NHL, and coached one Mike Grier. So just something to keep in mind there. They were together. I think it was the 08-09 season. So Woodcroft, I know, like, last year was kind of the talk of the town. Oh my gosh, look what he did with the Oilers, like this team kind of, and then this year, terrible start, right? But I think Woodcroft is still a pretty good coach, and it's just someone to kind of keep in mind there. So finally, Bruce Boudreau, who's been a head coach for a bajillion years, right? Was formerly the Canucks head coach, has also been in Minnesota, Anaheim, Washington, won the Jack Adams back in 2008 as the coach of the year. He is going to be a guy who I think can squeeze the most out of a roster, right? But kind of has trouble kind of getting over the hump. But the Sharks team, right, they're not ready to get over the hump. But I think, though, one, you're going to get a good quote from Bruce Boudreau, because he's just a delight to talk to from all accounts. And then two, again, if you're trying to build, and maybe he doesn't want to come, he's almost 70. Maybe he doesn't want to go to a rebuilding team. Maybe he's happy I think he's doing TV and stuff like that. But I think if you want to kind of build, try to kind of get the most out of your roster, Bruce Boudreau is definitely kind of someone to look at here. So that's going to be my list of guys I would, just keep in mind. There's a bajillion coaches out there. And as we get, actual interviews and kind of get more information on who the Sharks are actually going to interview or potentially hire, we'll dive in deeper into those guys. And once they make their choice, we'll kind of do a full profile of them, that person, what they're bringing to San Jose and what to kind of expect. So that's going to be it for me today. Make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Until tomorrow. Bye, friends.